everybody and welcome to Chairman of the Board. Over the next few shows I'm going to be talking through my top 40 games of all time. This particular show will cover games 40 through to 31, and I would love it if you guys could play along and leave me your 40 through to 31 in the sections below. Now, I thought it'd be really interesting to do this maybe once a year and see how these games kind of move up on the list or move down on our lists, or even move in or out of the list completely. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how these lists develop as the years go by. So let's get started at number 40. Okay, so at number 40 I have Lord of the Rings, The Confrontation. Now this is an asymmetrical two-player game where one player is controlling the Fellowship, trying to get Frodo over to Mordor, and the other player is controlling the Shadow team and trying to find and kill Frodo, or trying to get 3 of their units over to the Shire. Now the game plays pretty similarly to Stratego, where everybody's kind of pieces are hidden from the opponent, and when they collide they're revealed and kind of the stronger unit kills off the weaker unit. And you have to kind of remember where each player's pieces are. But this has to be one of the most tense games I've ever played. The smallest mistake can really cost you the game in this, so you really have to think through each move really carefully. And it's really interesting because once you move a piece forward, you're not actually allowed to move them back. It's just really, really tense, and it plays in a really succinct amount of time. Not a game for the light-hearted, but it's a really, really well-designed game from Reiner Knizia. So that's my number 40, is Lord of the Rings, The Confrontation. At number 39, I have Divinare. Now this is a really simple deduction game based around a contest of mediums. So everyone's going to be a psychic trying to predict how many of a certain type of card are distributed amongst all the players. It plays really quickly, kind of based on limited knowledge, so you're going to know the cards you have in your hand, and at a certain point in the game you're going to take a few cards from one of your opponents, so you're always going to get a bit more information each turn. And it's really interesting because each time you play a card you have to move your guess. So a timing comes into this as well, because once you think you have the perfect guess, you have a card of that type, and you don't really want to play it because you're going to have to move your guess. So it's really good to kind of pass those cards on to the next player. It's really simple, but the production is absolutely phenomenal. It's just really visually stimulating. And I just love the theme. It's just a bit different and it just plays really nicely. So a really simple one that can play with anybody. That's Divinare. At number 38, I have Mysterium. Now this is a cooperative game where one player is going to be a ghost, and they're going to be giving clues to the rest of the team to try and find a killer. Now the cool thing is that this ghost cannot say anything, they just have to give clues via these really, really imaginative and creative dream cards. And again, the production of this game is amazing. It's just, all the pieces are absolutely beautiful, the artwork is really, really great. And I must say, I wasn't really keen on this one to start with, but the more I've played it, the more I've enjoyed it. And it's just a really cool group activity, and being the ghost is really, really fun, but it's actually really difficult because sometimes you're given a bunch of cards that don't relate to anything you're trying to suggest. It's just really, really good fun, and everyone seems to enjoy it. So a very popular game, but rightly so. That's Mysterium. At number 37, I have the ever-popular party game, Codenames. Now, I'm sure you've heard about Codenames, but I'll just give a brief explanation. So basically, it's just a word association game where 2 teams are against each other, and one of those members of each team is basically a code master, and they're trying to give clues to their team to try and locate a bunch of words on a 5x5 grid. It's just a great group activity, a game that anybody can join in and understand. And it requires a lot on each player's kind of intelligence and making really kind of smart clues they can give to locate those words. Again, really good for parties and really great for like Christmas, and just a great family activity. It's a solid choice and always goes down well. That's Codenames. That's my 37th best game of all time. At number 36, I have Carcassonne. Now, this is, in my opinion, the greatest gateway game of all time. I've never played this with anybody who hasn't enjoyed it, and I've taught this to even the people who aren't remotely interested in board games, and they've really had a good time. It's basically a tile placement game where you're going to be building this kind of medieval landscape and getting points for placing workers on roads and making big castles and farming. It's just a really, really pleasant, nice game with very little confrontation, and it's just an absolute breeze to teach and learn. And the cool thing about it is you can add these expansions in. There are a number of expansions that can add to the kind of depth of the game, but without convoluting the rules at all. Because each time you're just going to be placing a tile or choosing to place a guy, and then it's the next player's turn. Really nice game. Really popular. And as I said, just a great game to get people into the hobby. That's Carcassonne. At number 35, I have the Commander version of Magic the Gathering. Now, what makes this different to the standard Magic the Gathering is that you have 100 card decks and you're not allowed any duplicates at all. And for me, that just creates so much more variation, and it makes the game so much more interesting because you're seeing different cards every time. I just love the amount of customization you can do with this game. You know, if you want to make an army of knights, you can. If you want to make an army of spiders, you can, or goblins, or orcs, or minotaurs, or sea creatures. You can do anything you want with this game. Now, I have to say, this game doesn't go down well if you have two players with different kind of mentalities, because the game in itself is pretty imbalanced, because there are just thousands and thousands of cards, and some are much more powerful than the others. So, if you have two players who are like-minded, you're going to have a really good time playing this, and you can have some really, really great custom decks and great battles. It's a really nice two-player game. It does work okay with more players, but ultimately I do prefer this a lot more at two players. So a really cool game. That's Magic the Gathering, the Commander version. Okay, so at number 34, I have Battle Line. Now this is another two-player game that basically players are trying to compete over winning these different flags, these 9 separate flags, by forming these different battle formations. Now these formations are basically poker hands, and the stronger hand wins the flag. So there's this real kind of tug of war as each player is trying to win 5 flags, I think. Either 5 separate flags or 3 adjacent flags. But what I really enjoy about this game is the kind of deduction that comes into it. Because as the game develops, you start to notice the cards your opponent has are sometimes the ones that you need in order to beat him. So you're always kind of adjusting on the fly and trying to make the best hands as possible. Knowing when to play your cards and where to play them, knowing which hands to concede, and it's really interesting, and it almost plays like a pub game. I don't know, a really, really clean design, and the game actually comes with like 2 variants as well, or variants, because you can play without these special cards or with special cards, which kind of throw a spanner in the works and kind of add a bit more randomness to the game. But I prefer the game a lot more just in the simplest form. It's just a really, really tight, clean game, and a good one at that. So that's Battle Line. At number 33, I have Bang, the dice game. Now this is a super, super fun hidden roll and dice rolling game. Basically, each player is going to be a cowboy, and someone's going to be the sheriff. And the sheriff is going to have a deputy amongst all the, or a couple of deputies amongst the players, and they're going to be trying to keep the sheriff alive, whereas some players are going to be outlaws and going to be trying to kill the sheriff, and one player is going to be the renegade, and they're going to be trying to be the last man standing. And what's cool is that all these roles are completely hidden, apart from the sheriff, so as the game develops, he has to learn who's trying to help him, who's trying to hurt him, who's lying, because an outlaw might be trying to pretending to be the deputy and accusing others of people being the outlaws. It's just an absolute blast as you just get to roll dice and shoot your friends. It's brilliant. Absolutely very streamlined, very simple, it plays very smoothly. Absolute blast. That's Bang the Dice Game. At number 32, I have Escape, the Curse of the Temple. Now, this is a real-time cooperative dice rolling game where players are going to be rolling dice frantically in order to try and escape this cursed temple. This game is absolute chaos. Just laugh out loud from start to finish. Really tense because you have exactly 10 minutes to get out of this temple, or you're locked in forever. And what's really cool is during the soundtrack that you play alongside with, every now and then a gong goes off and you have to try and get back to the center tile before you lose another dice. And it's such good fun. As I said, absolute chaos. Everybody's just running around like headless chickens. But the fact that it takes 10 minutes, and you know, that's all it takes, 10 minutes, because that's how long the soundtrack is. So you can play again and again, and it's just an absolute riot. That's number 32, Escape, the Curse of the Temple. At number 31, and my final game for today, is Masquerade. Now, Masquerade is a hidden roll and memory game, where everybody is going to be given a kind of a roll card, and these roll cards all have unique abilities. But what's interesting about this is that these roll cards are hidden, and they're constantly switched around the board, so you're never really sure about what role you are. And if you claim to be one of these cards and therefore use the ability, the other players can kind of challenge you on them. So if they think they're the king but you think you're the king, then they can, or you can challenge them, and if you turn out to be right, then they have to pay a fine to the bank and you get to use the ability, and vice versa. So it's just a really fun game. It can be really hard to keep track on who's what, but that kind of uncertainty just creates a real fun atmosphere. And the artwork of this has to be the best artwork I've ever seen on a card game. It's just absolutely phenomenal artwork. So a very simple game, but one that I really enjoy, and I love that it supports so many players. That's my 31st best game of all time, Masquerade. Okay, so I hope you've really enjoyed this first instalment of my top 40 games of all time. I thought it was interesting how a lot of the games on my list were actually very simple and light, almost gateway games. So it'll be interesting to see what's up next. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. For everyone else, I will see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.